Ideally, when we try to discover the truth, we think about it and do research to the best of our ability and then follow the evidence and argument to its logical conclusion. In other words, we start by trying to figure out which premises are true and then reach a conclusion. Just as a quick reminder, a conclusion is the main thing you're saying, and a premise is a claim that supports your conclusion. Oftentimes, when I have philosophical conversations with people, they do the opposite. They start with the conclusion and then rationalize it by reasoning backward. They start with a claim that they already believe is true without having a good idea of what the premises are or whether the premises are true, right? And then they try to find the best premises to support that conclusion. So for instance, let's say a person is some sort of atheist, so they don't believe God exists. And when you ask them why that's true, they don't really know what the argument is, but they know that God doesn't exist. They start with that belief and then try to support it by finding the best premises. Now we can imagine the opposite happening, a person who believes that God exists but doesn't really know what the argument in favor of that claim is. And so they try to find the best premises to support that belief instead of having already done that before reaching the conclusion. They're reasoning backward instead of forward. Okay, I'm going to say that again. They're reasoning backward instead of forward. So I think this is a problem because if you do that, you're less likely to have true beliefs. It's not impossible, okay, but you're just less likely. And the reason is this: if you're already convinced that your belief is true, then you're not very open to the possibility that you may be wrong. That tends to be the case. So then what happens? You're selective in your research and thinking. You pick and choose whatever supports your conclusion, and you don't give appropriate consideration to anything that opposes your position. It's called confirmation bias. Now, having explained this problem, I want to emphasize that philosophers do this too. Philosophers aren't immune to this, okay? In fact, we're really good at it because of our training. Reasoning backward from conclusions is a population-wide problem. Almost everybody does it to some degree. And it's understandable. People want to know stuff, right? We generally think that being ignorant is bad. And for the most part, people don't like being wrong. So it's uncomfortable if it turns out that what we initially believed was true is in fact not true. These two things together, wanting to know stuff and not wanting to be wrong, push us to be attached to our beliefs, right? It pushes us to reason backward from our conclusions. So what's the solution? I think the solution is not to be so committed to our beliefs, which is easier said than done, okay? Especially when we're talking about ethics. I mean, if you think something is obviously wrong, you think it's obviously wrong, and it's hard to see the other side, right? Nevertheless, I do think we can make progress by being humble. I've said this in other videos before, it's because I think it's really important. I think it comes down to humility. I think it's about acknowledging that the truth is difficult to attain and that it's more likely that your belief does not contain the entire truth, right? Because if you had that attitude, then you wouldn't be so confident. Also, it's okay to say you don't know. I've said this before in other videos. Saying that you don't know is a perfectly fine response. It's totally okay to say that you don't know if God exists or whatever. That said, I'm not proposing that we should never have confidence in our beliefs. Rather, I think it should correlate with how much we've reasoned forward well. If we make sure we start with true premises without having a horse in the race, and then arrive at a conclusion because that's just where the evidence and logic led to, then we can be confident in that belief. And the better we do that, the more confident we can be. All right, I'm going to end it here. I hope you learned something interesting, and I'll see you all next time.